we share with pride, for a world where health is on our side. Collaboration and science as pillars, G-Force, we aim for rigor. G-Force, together we thrive, health and safety will always strive. From to forth, let's make it right. G-Force, for safe food we fight. G-Force, for safe food we fight.
Joining this second session of the day for day 2 of the third Global Food Regulatory Science Symposium as part of the 18th Dubai International Food Safety Conference. We're very pleased to welcome you in this hybrid event. It's great to see the level of energy that is in the room, actually, very positive energy. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your interest. And I think the topic that we're going to be discussing is of equal importance and practically a consequence, I think, a corollary to the discussion. That wasn't me. A corollary of the discussion that we've just had. You know, we've had a discussion on risk assessment, and I think risk assessment cannot be done most effectively unless there is collaboration, and that's what we're going to be talking about at this session. We're going to be talking about collaboration between food regulators and how we can envisage what we call food regulatory cooperation mechanisms. And food regulatory cooperation mechanisms do not limit themselves to collaboration between regulators themselves, but also between regulators and their stakeholders or their partners. So this is really the objective of this session. And we thought that before we get a discussion between all of us here, but of course with key opinion leaders, we would start with some setting the scene presentations in order to review the mechanisms of food regulatory cooperation that are already in place in the region. And we know we are in one country that belongs to the Gulf Cooperation Council, and where the Gulf Cooperation Council Standardization Organization acts as a reference and as a key and as a leading regulatory authority in various matters, including in food regulatory matters. And I would like to invite Engineer Ahmed El-Basha, who actually has a great role in leading the coordination of one of the technical committees of the GSO, Technical Committee 5, to review for us the mechanisms of collaboration that exist within the GSO. So please join me in welcoming Engineer Ahmed El-Basha.
Thank you, G-Force. Thank you, Prof. Excuse me, I tell me speak in Arabic, for my slide is to English, so I will speak in Arabic. تكلم عن هيئة التقييس الخليجية ودورها في موائمة وتوحيد المواصفات القياسية على المستوى الإقليمي. الهيئة التقييس باعتبارها منظمة إقليمية كذراع فني للأمانة العامة لمجلس التعاون الخليجي، وتعتبر الهيئة تهدف إلى تحقيق السلامة العامة والبيئة وحماية المستهلك والصحة، وأيضا تسهيل التبادل التجاري البيني ودعم الاقتصاديات دول مجلس التعاون ودعم الصناعة في دول مجلس التعاون من خلال إزالة المعوقات الفنية وتسهيل التبادل التجاري، وأيضا وضع المتطلبات الأساسية للسلامة وتوفير المنصات والأدوات الخاصة بالتنفيذ.
sorry to interrupt. For colleagues who wish to follow in English, because I know the presentation is in Arabic, we have simultaneous interpretation, but online. So you just need to connect online through the GeForce website. And basically, you just use the interpretation on one of your devices. So obviously, please put it on mute so that it doesn't have any echo, but the interpretation is available online. Sorry about that.
تحقق هذه المتطلبات أو الموضوع دعم الاقتصاد التجاري في دول مجلس التعاون من خلال السوق الخليجية المشتركة، وأيضا دعم النظام النافذة الواحدة، وأيضا نظام الاتحاد الجمركي الموحد. التقييس دائما نتساءل كثيرا، والمواصفات القياسية لماذا التقييس؟ بالتأكيد أنه موجود التجمع الخليجي للمترولوجيا، وايضا مركز الاعتماد الخليجي، وايضا مركز التقييس الخليجي للتدريب، بالاضافه الى التجمع الخليجي للمختبرات. المركز الخليجي للاعتماد هو خرج من عباءه هيئه التقييس الخليجيه، واصبح جهه حياديه مستقله تقدم خدمات الاعتماد لمختلف المجالات ذات العلاقه بالاعتماد. هيئة التقييس تقوم بإصدار مجموعة من الوثائق وأيضا الإجراءات والاعتماد في مختلف المجالات، منها على سبيل المثال اللوائح الفنية الإلزامية، وأيضا المواصفات القياسية التطوعية لتطبيقها، بالإضافة إلى الوثائق الخاصة المتعلقة بالconformity assessment. احنا سنتطرق في هذه العجالة على موضوع تطوير المواصفات القياسية الخليجية، بالإضافة إلى كيفية إجراءات إعداد هذه المواصفات وآلية تبنيها واعتمادها وفقا للإجراءات والأنظمة المتبعة على المستوى الخليجي. المواصفات الخليجية يأتي مصدرها من جانبين، جانب آخر وهو الجانب المواصفات الوطنية في حال وجود تجربة ناجحة في إحدى الدول.
A successful experience that adopted specific standards that are adopted and then turned into more regional or Gulf standards, in addition to adopting the international standards. And the majority of the Gulf standards are primarily drawn from the international standards. Besides the study of some standards and requirements done by specialized committees with the participation of all member countries to come up with the standards in order to be adopted as standards or mandatory bylaws and regulations. So the process of unifying or harmonizing the GCC standards requires a lot of procedures and work that starts from technical committees or general and steering committees. We have 52 technical committees for standards and standardization, in addition to other steering committees that are important in all sectors and fields and in all industries. So we'll focus on some committees here. We have 19 main committees in addition to a number of subcommittees and other working groups. These requirements and these committees create requirements for different sectors. If we focus a little bit on food sectors, since it's our topic for this symposium, we have four technical committees, main committees. We have also subcommittees in addition to the presence of work groups that were created recently including the main committee for procedures and food regulations and requirements. We have also different specialized subcommittees. And, and recently we separated one of the subcommittees to work independently under the big umbrella of food committees. The process, if we look at the huge number of participants and stakeholders in these technical committees. For example, we have 121 technical committee. We have a number of working groups in different industries and sectors, including food assessment technology. When it comes to requirements, we have 152 committees. The number of participants in the development of these regulations and bylaws goes beyond 3,000 members from all the country members and the participants from the concerned parties and entities. So we have technical guides that drive this endeavor, and that guides us as we are working out these standards, and these guides are updated frequently in light of the newly introduced standards in and studies. So, over the past period of time, so we're talking about the past 2 years, we've been making considerable progress to include also the consumers for more active participation through the presentation of studies and notes regarding to different areas and fields. These procedures are also supported by the digitization and automation of all the procedures, from the project system to all the different stages and phases of the projects, and also by the creation of forums and digital platforms for discussions. And soon we are preparing also for the online voting for projects related to standardization that will be launched with the coming new year. Also, the process of the development of these standards is also supported by the presence of the following systems. The main purpose, when the main pillar of having a GCC standards is to have a harmonized standards that are adopted and accepted by all stakeholders, especially the commercial and industrial sectors. This system should work on building confidence, and also by increasing the number of clients, and also to have the needed level of transparency and neutrality, and also by aligning all the efforts when it comes to chain supply and all the different processes. And ending with the client or the end user. This system, also this mechanism, also is supported by different tools through the organization awareness and of activities, and also by having some groups that participate in the development of the standards, and also by harmonizing the requirements and of standards related to testing, certification, and accreditation when it comes to international standards and accreditations. Also, the ongoing awareness raising about the importance of unified standards. This mechanism and the system helps and serves a lot of cases and issues. Of course, we try to get an overview of the procedures taking while the process of the standardization. The first stage is the preparation of the standards or proposed standards by proposing the initial standards by the different committees. Also, the representatives of the technical specialized committees also contribute with their suggestions that are reported to the committee again to start the second phase and the beginning of May of each year to start by analyzing and distributing the drafts of these initial standards, and these phases and stages takes almost 10 months, starting by the distribution of the project and preparing the draft, the committee draft, and then to the second phase, which is drafting the standard and finally the final draft standard. All these stages will have always a window for comments and contributions and insights from all the different parties and stakeholders. And the project there, it's also possible for the project to be sent to way earlier phase or a later phase, depending on the quality and the approval of the project or the draft. The project is then certified or approved by the committee in the standardization authority. And this process, as I mentioned, could be steered fully and managed fully in an automated way in order to enable all the participants and stakeholders to participate and contribute to the project according to their views. This mechanism aims to unifying the standards and to get them approved by all the different parties. So the committee eventually votes and passes the standards for accreditation, and so it all happens electronically, and also with a minimum number of votes for each committee, depending on the nature of the project and the draft. So again, for each stage has its own timeline and time frame, depending on the product or the requirement or the standard being drafted. These phases are flexible, so we could extend or shorten depending on the needs. For example, if we have some international standards that could be adopted, then we can shorten the time frame to facilitate and process more faster. We could also offer translation when to facilitate the process as mentioned. So the achievements and the contributions of the Gulf projects, we have more than 27,000 standards and technical guidelines that serve the different sectors. We're talking about less than 5% that are technical regulations, and the remaining is standards. And also they are, again, as we mentioned, they include the international standards, including the ISO, and also the standards for the Muslim countries, the EU, the FDA, the American FDA, and we have all, we have also some standards that aim to serve a much wider objective that could reach 2,000 standards. We have in the GSO, we have new technology, which is the transformation of these standards into Excel format, which had a great impact to facilitate the attainment of information and the process of information. It was transformative in the Arab world to have an XML, not Excel, XML standards in order to help the organizations and different entities to obtain them in Arabic through the XML. Since the standards issued by the ISO in Arabic do not include XML or are not exported in XML. So we have standard publication system, online system that serve the member countries, in addition to the process of the accreditation and approving the Gulf countries. When all the country members adopt and approve the standards through the concerned committees, and then the logo or some examples of the unified regulations uh, or frameworks in order to come up with one unified framework in order to save time and effort, and also to agree on having one agreed upon technical standards. Here we have a continuous cooperation and collaboration with international organizations that boosted the process and the production of these standards. We have also partnered with concerned companies and organizations in capacity building, in harmonization, in mutual accreditation, and also having the experts from these entities and organizations. On the other hand, is the integration system. So we integrated these standards with international organizations in order to facilitate the provision of the services for the Gulf countries. This integration helped a lot, on the one hand, through the attainment of the international standards and also the contribution to these standards. It also facilitated again, the acquirement of the most updated laws and standards, because we have like direct access to these updates once they are published. Whenever there is an update or a modification of these standards. Also, selling these standards to member countries is also available there. So then in light of our strategic direction, we will continue in developing these standards with the participation of all stakeholders and concerned parties through a number of means available to develop and create standards to ensure having a unified standards, and also to guarantee unified and harmonized application. So we have again we have a technical guideline that will be applied next year. Strategically, we are planning to have these standards available for other countries outside the GCC to adopt them. We have also this direction to adopt some standards from the Arab Association. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ahmed El-Basha, for this great overview of the GCC food regulatory cooperation and the way essentially food standards and standards in general are being developed and adopted across the region, aiming for that harmonization. So as we said, basically, the beginning of this session is really aiming at setting the scene and trying to learn from various experiences of food regulatory cooperation. Our next speaker was supposed to be Dr. Tarek Al-Houbi, who unfortunately was not able to be with us in person and was supposed to be connecting online Fortunately, he was detained by a requirement that he could not avoid. The topic of discussion of Dr. Tariq Al-Houbi was related to sharing with us the African Food Regulatory Cooperation environment, and particularly sharing the idea of the creation of the African Food Regulatory Authorities Forum. As you know, Africa is also another region where integration of food regulatory processes is one of the objectives. It's one of the objectives that is pursued as a result of the conclusion of one of the most important free trade agreements internationally, and that's the African Continental Free Trade Area. This agreement was endorsed by the African Union Commission in 2015, and it's actually now in the process of being implemented with an objective to integrate various regulatory frameworks, and of course, food and agriculture being a major commodity that is produced and that is traded by various African countries. This is a key area of food regulatory integration. Briefly, as you know, Africa is a diverse continent. And even though, again, there is that objective of food regulatory integration, Africa is also made of various regional economic communities that we call RECs, that also have within themselves various food regulatory cooperation mechanisms. However, two key decisions were made by the African Union Commissions that are worth mentioning. The first decision was the creation of the African Food Safety Agency, AFSA. That decision was made in 2017, and it's still being in the context of operationalization. Part of this operationalization exercise was actually to look at what would be the governance structure that would help this African Food Safety Agency operate and how we can envisage mechanisms of cooperation between regulators in Africa. Hence came the idea at the instigation of the National Food Safety Authority of Egypt, NEFSA, in collaboration and under the leadership of the African Union Commission to create this African Food Regulators Forum. So I don't think it will replace Dr. Tariq Al-Houbi's introduction, but we have two short videos that were prepared by our team in support of the creation of AFRAF. We'll see the first video that outlines the objectives of AFRAF, and the second video that summarizes the first meeting of AFRAF. So that's the overview of AFRAF. Actually, the inaugural meeting of this forum was held practically a year to the day in Cairo. And essentially, discussions are continuing in order to further operationalize this forum and to make it active in supporting the African food regulatory integration, and particularly in the context of the upcoming operationalization of the African Food Safety Agency. So again, this is a model, one of the models that we can use as part of the conversation that we're going to have as to what mechanisms we can envisage for the region, and particularly for the sub-region of the Gulf Cooperation Council in food regulatory cooperation. Now, before we move to the next segment, we received a couple of questions about access to the presentations, and we've seen many of you taking pictures. So first of all, I'd just like to mention that this meeting is being recorded. I mean, it's actually broadcast live, so you can access the live broadcast directly, and it will be left on the GeForce YouTube channel. The translated, so the Arabic version of it also will be made available. So basically both languages will be made available. But again, if you want to access all the material associated with the meeting, including to access the interpretation, so geforce.org is the website that you go through. You go into the events section, and when you click on the event, you will find basically the agenda and the various sessions. Under each session, we will be uploading the presentations. So every presentation that was used will be uploaded. This is part of our commitment to transparency and sharing all the information that was made available during these sessions. So just for your reference. Now, continuing our discussions and continuing on setting the scenes, I would like to invite Professor Hussein Masrouri, the Director General for the Center of Food Safety and Quality of the Sultanate of Oman, to actually initiate the discussion and the introduction of the concept of an Arab Food Regulators Network.
Thank you, Prof. Assalamu alaikum. Very good morning for all of you. It's almost afternoon or noon time. I would like first to thank you all for attending, and to the organizing committee and organizers to give me the opportunity to participate in this event, Dubai Municipality, and also thanks for the GeForce to Prof. Sam also for giving us this opportunity to present to this initiative. And let me start off saying something about myself and the case in Oman. My background is a fisheries. I'm a fisheries scientist. I have little to do in food science. And I worked with some administrative position, but mainly in academia. When I went to the Food Safety and Quality Center, the main difficulty I found or I faced is the communication and the partnership with the private sectors. So I found that the organizers, which is the Food Safety and Quality Center, and I'm giving an example of our center, are sitting in line or standing in line with the private sectors, but they are facing each other. So number 6 that we see is 9, will be seen as 9 by the private sector, although it's the same number. And on purpose, I'm saying that we see but as 6 and they see it as 9. I'm giving them actually advantage because they are actually probably, and I'm not minimizing also the status of the organizer, but I always see the private sectors as a leader actually, and they see always ahead, I'm sorry to say it, ahead of the organizers. And this is true because we see that, or we believe that the proof is on their shoulders, and we are only organizing the whole things. So now we made that move. Instead of facing each other, now we are facing together toward our target, toward our objective, but not in one line. So we are not, they are not following us, or we are not following them. No, we are moving together in one direction. So now taking that experience also and apply it to the other side, which is that we as organizers in the region also need to align together to facilitate actually the work and to make the life easy for the private sectors. Because food is food, whether it is in X country or Z country, and human is also the same. So as long as the food is safe, we still can accommodate some differences in the quality, because it's always depend on the preferences of people, and it's even influenced by the culture. So there is always rooms to harmonize the efforts, and this harmonization will not come by individuals' action. We have all to work together to align such works, because such collaboration and cooperation will help us a lot in sharing knowledge and sharing the information and assessing risk. We've been talking about the risk assessment, and one of the most important component is sharing or spreading the information about the risk between countries, because that will help also in managing the risk. It's also good to highlight that the food sector is the second largest actually industry in the world after maybe oil and gas. So collaboration, cooperation, and putting some good network will of course enhance the economic growth of the country. Now, lastly, maybe I should also acknowledge all ideas start at some stage, and actually there should be always triggers to start. And I should say that maybe Prof. Sam is the trigger for such networks. So on behalf of myself, and if you allow me also on your behalf, I would like also to thank Prof. Sam for taking this initiative and believing on it and bring it all the way until today, sitting all together in this room to try to maybe develop this initiative today. And I believe I'm speaking on my behalf as Oman. I'm supporting this idea, and I believe that maybe most of you support this initiative, this networking. And for that, and because Prof. Sam is the godfather of this idea, I will give him actually the floor or the ground to start this initiative, and maybe we can participate later on together. Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Hussein, and it is also a great testament of leadership to not only to espouse, but also to develop ideas such as the ones that we'll be discussing, and hopefully that will be enriched by the collective input of everyone in this room. So in fact, actually, to help structure the discussion, one of the things that we discussed with Prof. Hussein and Dr. Tar El-Houbi was really to review the issue, because again, the idea is not to present a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. So the idea is actually to look at what is the issue, to identify what are the avenues or the vehicles that are already available, what are the experiences that we can learn from, and then subsequently actually to think about what can be done in order to enhance food regulatory cooperation mechanisms in the region. So one of the key issues here is that food regulators are faced with numerous challenges, probably far more than what the resources that are available to them to address. And of course, there are mechanisms to address that, really using that risk-based approach. But emerging issues continue to actually pop up on a very regular basis. And again, collaboration between regulators is practically a no choice. It's an imperative for success. And again, there is, of course, a great mechanism of collaboration that we all know of that was created in 1963 and behind which we all rally, and that's the Codex Alimentarius Commission. That's our international food standard setting reference. The only issue is that that reference is a very busy reference. And when we meet during these discussions, we tend to focus on the items of the day. We try to solve the issues that we are developing in the context of international standards. And yes, they can be definitely, these meetings, they can be a great forum for exchanging ideas, but they're not necessarily sustainable forums to maintain, to have a practical food regulatory cooperation mechanism. And that's why when we look at the international context, there are a number of initiatives that were developed over time and that try to achieve some, if not all, of the objectives that we are after, trying to bring together regulators, make them work together, try to identify priorities, sharing these priorities, and potentially creating mechanisms of collaborations. These are some of the initiatives that I had the privilege to contribute to their creation. The first one is the International Heads of Food Agencies Forum, which was created in 2020 at the instigation of the Saudi Food Safety and Food and Drug Authority, sorry, the SFDA, the Saudi Food and Drug Authority, in collaboration and also with the co-leadership of two other agencies, the Irish Food Safety Agency, as well as Food Standards Australia and New Zealand. This forum was convened to facilitate engagement and dialogue targeting to advance a common collaborative agenda. The way the forum was created was by invitation, so a number of members were included both at the inception, but also on a continuous basis. So, for example, the French Food Safety Agency is part of that, the UK Food Standards Agency, the Japanese Food Safety Commission. We have also the participation of the Singapore Food Safety Agency, etc. And countries can make applications to this forum and can actually be included according to the governance structure that was set. Another forum that is more recent, that was created in 2023 as part of the Indian leadership to the G20 grouping, and that's the Global Food Regulators Summit. This is a forum that was initiated by the Food Safety Standards Agency of India. Its objective is to create really an anchor point for regulators to meet. And in fact, FSSAI, supported by the government of India, decided to maintain this forum on an annual basis. So it met in 2023 at an inaugural forum. And in fact, it was convened a few weeks ago, in fact, I think late September in New Delhi, and witnessed the participation of over 70 countries. It is meant to be, again, an informal gathering of food regulators exchanging mostly information, sharing their challenges, sharing also their view about how to tackle some of the emerging issues, including the ongoing challenges of sustainability and how to address all the different factors that impact food safety and quality. At the regional level, we've talked about the African Food Regulatory Authorities Forum, and there's another forum that I would like to mention at the Caribbean level. Basically, the Caribbean Food Safety Task Force was created in 2019. Again, this is also another forum recognizing that every Caribbean country is probably, in and by itself, a single entity with their own regulatory authority, but the resources that are available to every authority is probably not enough to tackle all the emerging issues. So again, that imperative of collaboration is really needed. And in fact, in the Caribbean, they had already decided to create a Caribbean agriculture Health and Food Safety Agency. I'm trying to review the acronym. So CAFSA. So it's the Caribbean Agriculture, Health and Food Safety Agency. This was created a number of years ago, but since its creation, it focused primarily on the priorities of plant health and animal health. And it was looking to enhance its capacity in food safety. This task force was created, in fact, as a formalized entity that was recognized by the ministers in charge of the economic integration of the CARICOM countries. Now, if we get closer to us at the regional level, we know that already there are formalized mechanisms. We've heard from Engineer Ahmed about the GSO and the formalized mechanisms to have GCC standards for food, and essentially how those contribute to the integration of the framework in the region. We also have at the broader regional level, at the Arab level, the Arab Industrial Development Standardization and Mining Organization, ETSMO, which also has a food standards or a standards initiative within which food is a component. So again, that's also another mechanism of regional integration. As a result of a number of initiatives of capacity building, and I would like to mention the Arab Food Safety Initiative for Trade Facilitation that was funded by the Swedish International Development Agency and that was implemented by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, we've witnessed the creation of a group that is known as the Arab Task Force on Food Safety, the ATF, which actually had the benefit of being sustainable in what sense? In the sense that after the end of the initiative, this grouping became formalized as part of the, as a standing committee reporting to the Economic and Social Council of the League of Arab States. This, along with an SPS coordination structure that was also part of this council. Now, the question, we have all this, do we need something else? And actually, you're going to help answer the question if that's indeed the case, if this is something that we need. Because again, these formalized mechanisms, they have an objective. Like when the TC5 meets, they have an agenda that they have to go through, just like Codex meets. And essentially, they have to go through that agenda, of course, reporting to the governance structure that they are at. And the question is, do we need something more? And I guess the discussions that we've had, particularly with Professor Hussein, with Dr. Tara, and with other regulators from the region, as well as with stakeholders from the region, the answer is apparently yes, we do, in the sense that there are some practical elements of the collaboration that might be useful. And here, I'm going to use maybe a parenthesis before I give it back to Professor Hussein, if you'd like to continue the presentation, Prof. Hussein. I can go ahead, okay. Perhaps the parenthesis that I would use, and really drawing on my former experience as a regulator for the government of Canada, we've identified that while we had formalized mechanisms, for example, under the implementation of NAFTA, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement, we had a regulatory cooperation mechanism with the United States and Mexico. And that was a formalized food regulatory cooperation mechanism. But we felt that that again had its own agenda, and we are bound by that agenda. And yes, we can discuss these things, but it's very tough to go beyond that. And what we found is that creating an informal mechanism between regulators that could be anchored somewhere formally, but looking really at the practicality of the forum is most suited to address what we need. And in fact, from 2007 to 2009, we witnessed, so you see, I'm dating myself here, okay? We witnessed the creation of a number of what we called liaison groups. Liaison groups, we call them international. So we started with the chemical safety. So it tells you, I mean, my background is a chemist. So we started with the International Food Chemical Safety Liaison Group. The objective was we were all faced with increasing challenges on food chemical safety that were popping every day. And we needed something to update each other. We needed something where we could coordinate our priorities. We needed a mechanism where we could put our workforces to work together on an objective that serves our operational needs. And that mechanism, and for me, the testament of its potential success or the lack thereof is whether it survived the individuals that created it. And in fact, the mechanism has survived and continues to be a key element of cooperation right now between a number of countries. Those countries that created that mechanism are Canada, the United States, the European Food Safety Authority, the European Commission, the Food Standards Agency in the United Kingdom, the French Food Safety Authority, Food Standards Australia and New Zealand, and without forgetting also what used to be NZFSA, so the New Zealand Food Safety Agency, which then turned to become the Ministry of Primary Industries in New Zealand. Now, that structure was emulated subsequently to create an international food microbial safety liaison group and another group of an international social science liaison group. And this, just the illustration of some of the outputs of that group was producing papers and was producing work that is now referenced in Codex. Some of the research that group did, particularly about the way consumers receive information from food labels, was actually steered by these liaison group, was implemented by these liaison groups, and became a tangible output, not only for the countries that instigated it, but also for use by the international community as a whole. So the idea is to look at these experiences out there and whether essentially we could benefit from the creation of a similar mechanism within the region. So the idea here is this practical and potentially effective forum of food regulatory cooperation between regulators in the region. It's not working for me again, so if we can help it a little bit. So this is the idea of the creation of this Arab Food Regulators Network. The idea is to think about a network of competent authorities in the Arab region, no imposition on anybody. So it's essentially the community of the willing, if you will, whomever wants to join the leadership of the Sultanate of Oman and the Arab Republic of Egypt through their regulators, to be an informal structure, but nonetheless organized and structured, focused mainly to leverage existing collaborations and to promote any new collaborative opportunities between regulators. What would be the focus? The focus is to create a mechanism for regular engagement between those regulators. They update each other's on priorities. They look at updating each other's on their future directions. Future directions can inform each other's. And by the way, when we update each other on priorities, that's the starting point for convergence. If we're working on the same thing, we're more likely to end up with more convergent decisions at the end. When there are emerging issues, this forum could be a forum to exchange information. To give you the example of those liaison groups that I mentioned, I told you that the chemical safety one was created in 2007. When melamine hit in 2008, that was our main conduit for information exchange between regulators. Of course, mind you, at the time, InfoSan didn't exist in the same way that it exists right now. So it helped us tremendously. Of course, right now, we would use probably InfoSan even more as part of these liaison activities. So addressing emerging issues. The question of work sharing. Again, the capacities and the competencies in all the elements that support decision-making, and particularly the risk assessment capacities, the risk analysis capacities, continue to be limited around the world. I mean, I always say, when I was a regulator, when you take a graduate from a university, a science trained regulator in biology, biochemistry, chemistry, etc., it takes 4 years minimum to take that science graduate and turn them into a regulatory scientist, no matter what discipline they are at. And even if you take a legal expert and you want to make them a food regulatory legal expert, it might take a similar type of time. So those competencies, they don't grow on trees, and they are very, very precious competencies. So being able actually to work share or to share those competencies could be one of the objectives that we'd be pursuing, particularly if we can identify some joint initiatives that could be worked on still with the idea that every country will be pursuing their own pathway, but perhaps some elements of the pathway can be shared. So this can also be leveraged, particularly for efforts of training. Why do we need a training that is developed specifically for the risk assessment competencies in Egypt that is different from the one that we develop in Jordan, that is different from the one that we develop in Qatar? There is a potential that those resources could be actually put collectively, particularly that the region has something that the region shares that probably nobody or everybody actually envies: culture and language. And this is really a precious element. So language, that's a key starting point about working together. So this is already enabled by that capacity to share potentially competency development efforts. And of course, every one of these regulatory agencies is still contributing to Codex, is still contributing to the GSO, is still contributing to Arab or other international forums. Well, there is an opportunity even to coordinate that contribution to those other forums within this grouping. And again, because this contribution is not resource neutral, participating in Codex is very resource intensive. To have an effective contribution to Codex, you need to have a capacity that is dedicated to that. Not everybody can have a capacity dedicated to every committee. So there is a possibility to actually share those resources as part of a mechanism of this nature. So this is the idea to start with. So we would create this food regulators network. It will have, of course, linkages with other groupings that are already formalized and exist. One of the ideas, and given that, in fact, Professor Hussein and Dr. Tara participated and were active participants, in fact, to the Global Food Regulators Summit in India, which actually was reaffirmed by the Indian government and by various participants that this is here to stay. So this is a grouping of regulators that is here to stay. Why not consider this to be a subgrouping of that Global Food Regulators Summit, so at the regional level? So there are some linkages there. And of course, to contribute to the various cooperation mechanisms that exist. At the GCC level, we can cite at least two elements. Under the GCC General Secretariat, I believe that there is a food safety committee that actually works there and develops priorities. Of course, there is a potential for input there. At the GSO level, there's the TC5 and the way that TC5 operates. There's a potential to have input and to support the activities of the TC5, whether be it priority setting, whether be it enabling the development of the standards that might be contemplated at the sub-regional level. And of course, there's also the activities that are done at the League of Arab States, whether be it the ATF, the ETSMO, food standard setting processes, and so on. Now, an example, and by the way, this is going to be open to the discussion, so that's why, I mean, the whole discussion, we're going to dedicate practically an hour to hear your views on this, amongst other things that you can share about food regulatory cooperation. The modus operandi. Basically, given that we have two leading organizations that are at the instigation of this forum, it's a network of food regulatory science that is initiated by the Oman's Food Safety and Quality Center and the National Food Safety Authority of Egypt. The network will be open to all agencies and food competent authorities that are wishing to join. And by the way, this will not have funding associated with it. So essentially, if you join, you have to be willing to join, and you have to be willing to, if I may use a common word, put skin in the game. Basically, to participate with your own funding because you're taking benefit out of this initiative itself. Of course, if there are funding that is available and that can be shared and that can support those who may require some additional support, that could be also leveraged. The governance could be very simple. A steering committee that is made of NEFSA and the Oman Food Safety and Quality Center and other interested regulators in the region. It's always important to have a steering group, really, that manages the organization of the network. we're offering, as the Global Food Regulatory Science Society, to help administer or support, from a secretarial standpoint at least, the operations of this group, including opportunities of fundraising to support the initiatives that might be implemented by this network. Now, this network will not be created in a vacuum. On the contrary, we have a number of initiatives that are implemented in the region and that are funded by many donors and many partners. I'm going to mention the Arab Codex Initiative. We know about the USDA collaborations, multi-stakeholder collaborations, European-funded initiatives, etc. The idea, again, is to create synergies between these initiatives. Of course, each of these initiatives will continue to have its own objectives, its own deliverables, but the idea is synergizing some of the outputs such that, again, we drive and we row with the same rhythm, if you will, because then we can maximize the distance that can be accomplished in that context. Now, part of the continued development of the modus operandi would be an agreement on some of the values. And I think everybody would concur with the values of Codex: transparency, collaboration, and independence. I mentioned transparency. That includes even on the sources of funding that might be used, the finality of the work that will be done, or the outputs that might be produced by the initiatives that could be developed and implemented collaboratively. So as we said, this can contribute to the agenda of formalized mechanisms that will continue to be the same. So you see, the idea here is not to compete, not to duplicate any of this, rather to synergize with them and even to fuel the initiatives that some of these formalized mechanisms can be delivering. So again, not duplicating any other efforts being attempted through other initiatives underway in the region. But again, when we consider the world of food regulation, we all understand that, and that's, by the way, the big bubble of risk communication that we all know. Risk communication is the engagement with all the stakeholder community. So it's not a matter of regulators talking to each other behind closed doors. It's actually the opportunity to engage with the other partners of the system for the development of these food regulatory initiatives or these food regulatory decisions and any of their underpinning elements. So this could help us structure collaboration and engagement with industry partners and stakeholders, looking also at how to further make better use of academic institutions in the region that could contribute in the development of the competencies, the development of the data that might be needed, and why not even engage with consumer and health professional organizations in the region. So it's always good to see what we can produce, because, you know, having like an idea without thinking of what it can produce in a tangible manner. And I thought we could actually leverage some of the discussions that we've been having over this last day and a half. Yesterday, we discussed the gluten-free issue and how potentially celiac disease is possibly more prevalent in the Arab region and in other parts of the world. And we discovered that Oman has an initiative on celiac disease and how to improve the quality of life of celiac patients. Egypt has an interest in improving the quality of life of celiac individuals. In Jordan, there is a very active consumer organization and patient group that is trying to defend the celiac group. And in fact, we discovered this year, guess what? There is an Arab coalition of celiac organizations. We didn't even know it existed. So there is even an Arab coalition of celiac groups. This could be an initiative that regulators could agree to work on and to leverage their capacities in order to produce what they want to achieve for their own national interests. So I think actually the common goal is still the same: to improve the quality of life and the safety of celiac individuals. Corollaries to that: to promote the safety and quality of gluten-free foods, knowing that gluten-free foods are one of the segments of foods that is considered to be of higher value. So there is also an interest also to support innovation, the development of new products, and so on and so forth. So you see, there are multifacets to that, and this could be one of the initiatives that could gather the regulators together. They could work on how they can harmonize the detection methods for gluten and gluten-free foods, how they can provide guidance to industry to be more compliant with gluten-free requirements, how to look at diversifying sources of food and ingredients for celiac individuals in the region, to check whether or not the codex cutoff of 20 parts per million is actually an acceptable cutoff from a health standpoint for celiac individuals in this region. Because again, this was not checked. And if we have suspicion of a higher prevalence, and without knowing what celiac individuals are exposed to, the 20 ppm is a good starting point, but it needs to be further verified. So this is an example of an initiative. Every food regulator has to have a monitoring program. Trying to develop your own methodology for a monitoring program and for a risk-based monitoring program is actually quite resource intensive. Why not develop a common methodology for that? So the methodology will be common, but then the implementation will be done individually by each country according to their own needs and according to the implementation of the parameters. But at least the parameters will be developed jointly. Looking at coordination efforts in training and availability of risk assessment capacity. But also, and I'm putting that as a last item, but it's not the least, making sure, I can tell you, as a food regulator, one of the things that made me sleep less or less well is that when I wake up in the morning and I have one of my colleagues in another part of the world that came up with a decision that I didn't expect. Because when they come up with a decision that I didn't expect, the first question that I will be asked, what is your position on that? What are you doing about that? So if I don't know what you're working on and what you are preparing potentially to issue, that makes me very ill-prepared to answer. And that makes practically everything that somebody else does an emerging issue. So we're trying to reduce the number of emerging issues and making only those that truly emerge to be emerging by collaborating more. For example, and this is one of the practices that we did in the liaison groups. Every 3 months, we had a short call where we shared our priorities. These are the things that we're working on, and this is their progress. And we even adopted an informal protocol. So imagine, this is a group that never signed a piece of paper. We never signed an agreement between each other. It was all a gentleman or a gentlewoman agreement, like it's basically an agreement between peers. We've agreed that none of us will issue a decision without giving at least a 24-hour, because we know that you cannot probably give more because you have, other obligations of confidentiality, government requirements that you have to abide with or abide by, but basically 24-hour embargoed version of what you're going to be issues. 24 hours sometimes is really a precious commodity. You can use that to prepare yourself, to prepare your response, your media lines, to coordinate with your stakeholders, to give the heads up to your other government entities and so on. So we could think of mechanisms of this nature that will make the life of regulators easier. Of course, after that, these are all examples. All this will be enriched with your own experiences and with your own needs. Because at the end of the day, this has to address the needs. So this is why I'm tempted to say that what this may offer right now is not available with the other forums that I've just mentioned. Because all the other forums that I just mentioned have clear objectives, formalized mechanisms, and so on. Hence, essentially, this suggestion at this point. And now to open up the discussion, some of the next steps that could be contemplated. We are working on a paper that will attempt to summarize this idea and do an analysis of it. It's always good, actually, to do that. And that's also a way to solicit input and comments from the broader stakeholder community, and including to make that publicly available. Seeking input from the interested food competent authorities in the region. In the paper, we could also basically the review that we just made, we'll do it in more in depth, of these mechanisms that exist, their effectiveness, and the complementarity that we might achieve with additional, an additional forum of food regulatory cooperation. We could discuss the association with the Global Food Regulators Summit with the Food Safety Standards Authority of India. And we could, of course, work at drafting some terms of reference of this grouping amongst those who would be willing to contribute. And of course, it's always good to have a target. Our colleagues in Oman, under the leadership of Prof. Hussein, are intending to organize a food safety conference within the in April of 2025. So that's a mistake. It's not 2024. Apologies. So that's 2025. So April 2025. And as a result, that could be a venue at which this idea could take form and could be created. That's what we wanted to share with you in terms of this idea of the Arab Food Regulators Network. I'm trying to see the reaction in the room, whether it is an enthusiastic one, a questioning one, but we'll have the time to actually explore that. And we're fortunate actually to have now to move to a discussion mechanism on this. We meant to have a panel. It's not very conducive to have a panel with no chairs. So the way we're going to do it is basically there will be key opinion leaders that also contributed in the setup of this session that we will solicit of whom we will solicit the input. But this is also open to the entire room for input. So I would like perhaps to ask our colleagues to put the next presentation. Just to structure the dialogue, in the agenda, for those of you that have seen the agenda that we developed here, what we would like to discuss with you is really, of course, this idea. We would like to hear your feedback on this idea. But also, more broadly, to discuss the overall regional and global food safety regulatory irritants that are faced by the various stakeholders, to discuss the various mechanisms of collaboration, government to government, government to business, even actually to discuss some of the solutions that can be envisaged, including technology-supported solution in that regard. So that's what we're going to be trying to structure for the next period of this discussion. Perhaps I'll pause there, and I'm going to give the floor back first to Prof. Hussein for any immediate comments on the proposal. Prof. Hussein, before we start the discussion.
Thank you, Prof. You was the best actually to promote this initiative. So thank you. You did well. Well, actually, we have maybe half an hour, isn't it, Prof?
Yes.
Because yes. Probably to best utilize this half an hour, maybe we should not say a lot, but we open the floor for our colleagues from other countries also to contribute to this initiative, to this idea, but which I see that let me say it this way. From my side, I see that we are losing nothing, but we will gain a lot actually by developing such a network and moving from what is currently happening which is like individuals communication between country to countries into a holistic gathering between more countries to facilitate maybe sharing information, sharing knowledge, and communicating the risk, as Prof. Sam said, which should facilitate also the export and import between countries, maybe reduce the challenge from the private sectors by facilitating the trade between countries. So I think let us hear from our colleagues and then maybe we can add more.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Prof. Hussein. So perhaps actually we can try to hear some feedback and maybe ordering that from some regulators in the region. And I would like to acknowledge Dr. Feriel Gliss from Tunisia, so the Director General of the food safety agency, the Food Safety Risk Assessment Agency in Tunisia. And Dr. Friel, I would like to hear maybe your feedback on this proposal or any other mechanism of food regulatory cooperation. We're going to get you a microphone, so. Je vais traduire. So I will offer interpretation from French to English with your permission.
Merci pour cette invitation. C'est un honneur pour moi d'être parmi vous. Pour le cas de la Tunisie, on est dans une situation de transition. Donc, ce problème de risque, d'évaluation de risque et de gestion de risque a été promulgué par une loi en 1919. Pour ce qui est de l'Agence nationale d'évaluation de risque, on est en train de préparer le terrain dans le sens harmonisation de la réglementation en s'alignant sur les autres pays. Donc, c'est une période qui a pris beaucoup de temps. Et donc, si on veut réellement... Excusez-moi, j'ai une voix assez... Donc, voilà, donc on est là aujourd'hui pour s'inspirer de ce qui est sur aussi bien de l'Afrique que de tous les pays internationaux. Et j'espère qu'on va s'aligner réellement sur cette façon de faire les choses. Merci, Samuel.
Thank you, Dr. Friel. So first of all, Dr. Friel, thanks actually the organizers for the opportunity to be here. Also reminding that Tunisia is going through a transition period with, in fact, the promulgation of new agencies of food safety risk assessment, but also management since 2019. In fact, those agencies are preparing their framework of operations within the framework of risk analysis, aiming really to harmonize with the best practices conducted internationally. She's mentioning her interest in being inspired by the initiatives that are conducted internationally, but also at the regional level, whether it be African or otherwise, and actually indicating her alignment. If I take it also alignment and support to this initiative, est-ce que vous soutenez une initiative de la sorte, je peux le dire de cette forme-là, and actually support to this initiative. So, thank you. Any other regulator in the region that would like to, if we can start with the regulators and then I'm going to move, I don't want to put people on the spot, but I don't know, I'm seeing the head of international affairs in the Libyan Standardization Organization. I may call upon you, you know, Tunisia, Libya, we're moving east. So. If you have a question, yeah, please do.
This is Dr. Tanveer Ibrahim, Chief Nutrition, National Institute of Health, Pakistan. Sir, as per your regulatory competency, we need to ask there is a gap between in public sector organizations, we have food authorities, inspectors, and we have regulators in our ministry and institutions. There is a non-capacity building facilitation with respect to regulatory affairs, the HACCP preventive measures like HACCP and SPS measures. The capacity building submission and facilitation is very low, and there is a gap between inspection as well as in the implementation of manufacturing industries, even in nutraceuticals. So is there any regulatory framework in which we can have a facilitators like the private partner auditors, they can facilitate the manufacturing units for the provision of some certifications or best practices. But in public sectors, we have gap between the manufacturing units and inspectors, and there is a capacity building gaps. Are public sector regulators or facilitators which help them to probe up the gaps in the manufacturing units so that the inspectors could have a much incentive time to uh, approach for that gaps. Ji, thanks.
So thank you for that point, and I know it's kind of a deviation from the discussion that we're having. I guess maybe my initial comment, without trying to actually get us away from the objective, is that those elements of capacity building and those disparities definitely exist everywhere, actually in various jurisdictions. And I guess there are definitely benefits to learn from each other's experiences about bridging these gaps. And we could discuss perhaps individually how to address this particular topic, or if we have time, subsequently, if you allow me. Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, if we can take the intervention of our colleague from Libya on this mechanism in particular, but in general, on food regulatory cooperation.
Well, thank you, Professor. Thank you all for having us here and this wonderful presentation that's been going since yesterday, basically. And regarding this initiative, I think it's a great idea. And from our side of view, from the Libyan standard side of view, we believe that it's a need. And we believe that it is a very good idea, actually. And looking at it for the next food safety conference that's going to be held in Oman next April, I think it's a very good point of start. But that's will lead a very big job to do, for you to do for the Omanis and for you, basically for you, someone to do as well. To set up terms of reference, to set up rules for this initiative, how it's going to work, how the practicality for it to be a successful initiative. So I wish for it to be successful, and I wish for it to be established, and looking forward actually to participate for LNCs and for the Libyan standard to participate within it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Hadi. And I just wanted to mention that any comment that is made today is not a form of commitment. We are discussing. We're not signing, with blood on the creation of this. We have plenty of time to go back and to discuss, and actually also to mature the idea. So please feel free to express. In fact, we are really interested in hearing your views. So I don't know. I'm going to actually try to see. Is there another regulator from the GCC? Engineer Jabber, please. Dr. Jabber, please.
I'm Ali Shubbar, the Director of Testing and Metrology
Okay, sorry.
on the Bahrain National Standard Body. Yeah, we also, support this initiative, and this is my first time to hear about it. And all our support and efforts will be given to make it success and to make it available. But first of all, I'd like to enhance what we said, Prof. Samuel. We need to circulate this paper of the initiative amongst all the national standard body, and we will circulate also with our national stakeholders to make comments of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment, and thank you for the support of colleagues from Bahrain at this stage, definitely. Anyone else from the GCC or from the extended Arab region?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Bashir
salam.
from Dubai Municipality. I think it's a great initiative, but I just warn you, it requires strong commitment from the agencies. And also, I think the free flow of information is very important. Many people have reservations regarding free flow of information. So I think it's better to start with things that you can execute. Like you said, quick wins. We have lots of challenges that we face every year, like rumors, port rejections, and stuff like that. And sometimes we need quick replies because the public is waiting and the media is circulating those kind of rumors. And we have to have one unified answer to all of those. So I think in order to succeed, better to start something very simple, applicable, and practical. Because if we go for a full-fledged document to be implemented at once, I don't think it will have the success that we need.
I think actually from your point there, I'm taking, we can think big, but we can aim small for the beginning of what we can achieve. So absolutely, that's a point very well taken. Thank you for that, Dr. Bashir. Anyone else from the food regulators community? So if we can have microphone, and then I would like to open the floor to the industry partners.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Nazar
alaikum salam.
Abdulmajid from Dubai Municipality. Yes, I need to ask about how to engage all this initiative for the authority groups and regulatory groups with food identity technology, because actually this is a new revolution of this concept, food identity technology. How can, yeah, like Bashir would say, how can we be started with this issue? Because actually it make unity for differencing. Also related for the development of food businesses and food supply chain, and also related for the technology information, sharing information. All these things I think it will be said by all the audience, and just only I need to know how can we engage this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to now actually shift gears given the time is limited, and I would like to open it to our industry partners. Dr. Zubair, if I can put you on the spot and asking you as one of the leading organizations in the region from an industry standpoint, your thoughts not only on this initiative, but also on overall collaboration mechanisms between governments and businesses.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Sam, for the opportunity, and thanks for Dubai Municipality to give us this platform to share our comment. I believe it's challenging now to share some challenge after this positive vibes, I can say, shared from Mr. Ahmad and Dr. Hussein. But it's our commitment, as Dr. Hussein said, and I echo him that we might have different perspective on the issues between the government and the industry. And here I can say that, like someone, for myself, I came from the government. The change things really totally changed when I moved to the industry. So really, I echo Dr. Hussein on how things should be considered between the two, let's say, side of the system. So as part of our commitment and to share some of the challenge here that not specific in the GCC country, but if I can say on the region in general, given that we are operating across all the markets in Middle East, North Africa, and whole the region here, I can say it's mainly about the lack of harmonization in many regulation, and here regulation, I'm talking in specific in regulation which might impact the whole, let's say, food categories, the horizontal regulation, such as, labeling, contaminants, and even the test methods which applied in different categories, as well, of course, the vertical regulation, which is specific for some categories. And this really put a lot of hurdles on the trade and on the flow of the goods between these countries, which really we need to address. And I believe a lot of initiative that has been shared by you, Doctor, and the proposal to have this collaboration and flow of information, as Bashir mentioned, it's very crucial to address this issue. At least we can have some, let's say, alignment in what should be addressed and what is our priority as a region from regulatory perspective. One of the other thing that I need to address as well from industry perspective, it's about the import requirement, which again, there is really huge fragmentation, if I can say, between the countries in the requirement, including, of course, the documentations needed, the pre-approval process needed from different countries, as well the halal compliance requirement, because it's really big challenge now for the industry, given we have foreseen now a lot of initiative from each country, from each region, but it's not harmonized, and it requires different, let's say, certification process and a lot of really complexity, if I can say, on the industry side. One of the topic that also we addressed, I believe yesterday there was a full session about it. It's about the sustainability agenda, and mainly on the recycled material, the allowance of the recycled material in contact with food. Today, we are working in, let's say, in one global agenda, if I can say, sustainability. And there's a lot of product now, coming from all the world. As MENA or Middle East, North Africa, here we are importing many products from abroad. So and we expect a lot of challenge will come on the future, given that it's going so fast. In Europe, in America, it's going so fast to have this commitment to go and apply this sustainability agenda, mainly ensuring that we do have design for recycled materials. We do have limit a lot of virgin plastic. So this is one of really the biggest challenge that we need to address it now. And thanks that we have many of the regulatory bodies here across the region, not only GCC.
Thank you.
So I try to summarize at high level one of the main challenge. I know if there's any further question, we do have a lot of examples and scenario that we as industry, we face it in each topic that I mentioned.
In fact, actually, I would say that there is no harm in mentioning some of these challenges, in the sense that these challenges actually turn into opportunities of work, of solution development. So let's take them actually in a positive sense. So, and we are really, discussing the issues. I guess the identification of the issue is the starting point. If we don't identify the issue, there will be no solution on the horizon. So it's really the beginning of the way. So here I invite you really to even further elaborate, either yourselves or colleagues from the industry sector. I think actually the priority development element that we could go through will be through probably a multi-stakeholder engagement in order to identify what are the issues that are worth addressing. Of course, the regulators will have their own priorities through, whether it be guided by the political guidance, the societal requirements, etc., but also by the business requirements. And I think it's very important to know these business needs.
Yeah.
So if you want to further elaborate, and then
if I elaborate, mainly it will be I will not jump on the solution now, but following what I shared now, I believe we need to work more now in close collaboration with the regulators. And we have really great examples, I can say here in GCC with the food and beverage, where really we have a strong say in all the regulations, standard in early stage, where we can contribute and share our feedback and comment. And we need really to extend this collaboration, if I can say, across the region, not only for the GCC market, but we can take it as a role model, I can say, and we can leverage on this experience, which really working well. And we are involved in a lot of regulation and standard, hand to hand with the authority, be it in the GCC level as well on the member state for each country.
Excellent, thank you. So that's a great experience sharing. I don't know if others, yes, please, Georg.
I may build on what Dr. Zubair just said, and yes, indeed, sometimes import requirements and pre-registration requirements can be very difficult to meet. But I would think that all industry represented in this room do everything they can to, to comply with. But the issue is then, and you'd rarely hear this, that industry complains about a lack of enforcement, that there is at the same time, you'd see that there is low quality product or product that's obviously not compliant with the regulations coming into the market, be it parallel imports. For the beverage industry on top, there is also obviously the question of excise tax. That's an additional incentive to actually bring non-compliant product, untaxed product into the market. And if we could see here maybe stepping up in enforcement against those non-compliant products, that would be very much appreciated.
So uniformity of treatment, basically, and fairness in the market, yes.
Maybe I can add also, and to echo what my industry peers already mentioned. So in addition to the harmonization topic that is really very important across the region, there is also a need to have a plan for the future. So basically for the industry to get to know what's the agenda, what's the focus area for the future, so that we are also be ready for it and also collaborate as much as possible to make it happen.
Yeah. I think priority setting and knowing the priorities of the regulators is definitely, I echo that that's really a need. If industry is to be ready to comply, you need to know on what you need to work on, hopefully as early as possible. So Dr. Suzanne,
Thank
please.
you so much, Dr. Samuel. Very interesting session, and thank you to all the speakers. Again, building on what my colleagues said here, I think with the growing trends of changes that we anticipate in Europe and the rest of the globe, there is a need in the region on education and, evolving from a risk assessment point of view, and we take those decisions, especially in areas where there are differing views. There could be one party that you know, says yes, go ahead on a certain decision, and there could be one that goes in the anti-direction of that. So how can we base it on science and have our own decisions on risk, particularly that is relevant to our Arab population? So looking at things really more broadly and not to pick up decisions, you know, abruptly on that. I would say we need to do it different this time. Maybe, you know, readiness was not there in the past decade, but let's show something different in the coming future. Second point, the sustainability agenda is growing beyond packaging. And we know what all like companies have been, you know, showing up their initiatives. So what we've been seeing now in the regulatory framework is mostly on packaging. So again, that could create a gap in future. Should we be looking at other things that might be, you know, regulated in future? So where science is involved and the technical pieces, you know, Dr. Samuel. So again, a strategic agenda on the sustainability rather than take it into piecemeal approaches. You know, a call for you know, a packaging, and then we don't know what's next, but really working on that because we're all evolving, growing together in the sustainability one. I'm not going to take a lot of time. My third one is innovation. So again, industry, they're very keen every time we come up with new products, new design, new technology, and the regulations are sometimes not in the same pace. So how could we allow some flexibility when it comes to innovation, especially that the product meets all the safety requirements? So how can we create a match environment where, you know, innovation meets regulations at the same time? So we can continue thriving as industry, but at the same time, making sure our products are compliant and also, you know, produce products that are enjoyed by our consumers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Suzanne, for outlining these priorities indeed. Any other input that we can have now from the broader community? I mean, let's not actually limit it. Industry regulators, no boundaries. Industry regulators, academia. So yes, please.
Okay, let me clarify something very important. I mean, for us, and I'm coming back. I mean, from the background from Egypt, where the industry is more involved in all the regulation, which is coming from NAFSA, from EOS, and actually we are adding on all the time when it comes to the final outcome. Actually, let's say it's a very good initiative when it comes to harmonize. I mean, all the regulation. I do believe that it looks like a big iceberg where under the water we have a lot of challenge. I'm not going actually to talk again about what just Zubair mentioned. The challenge, we can turn it into opportunity, of course. But what really I can see, and this as per my discussion, I mean, with my colleague Shahat, we need really to see the industry involved in these committees because we are part of the stakeholders where we are going to implement whatever it will come out from this committee. So it's something very important for us as an industry. And like we always say, we have to fix the plane where the plane is taking off. I mean, as the way we go with our journey for the regulation, all the time we are talking about harmonization, and it's never happened. I mean, we are totally different. GCC is totally different than North Africa. We need, at the end of the day, to end up with something, I mean, we can simply implement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that input. Please.
Thank you for that excellent session. Sarah Boyd from the Technological University in Dublin, Ireland. So I'm speaking with a European hat on me now. I think the initiative looks excellent. Again, to note that stakeholder engagement and many opportunities for stakeholder engagement is probably the way forward, and you have that expertise on board as well. I note that you have mentioned maybe some gaps in education and training. And again, in TU Dublin, we actually offer that training and education, and we train all of the food inspectors for Ireland, but it is a complicated network as well. So I think it's an excellent initiative. It will take time, but the future looks very bright.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that bright note, and also, emphasizing, the contribution of the academic sector to be leveraged in this regard. I'm looking at Brendan there in the room, and maybe in a few minutes, Brendan, if you can speak about what technology providers can do in order to enable government to government engagement, government to business engagement, both in a confidential and open access forum. Because again, we're talking about the enablers here. So.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, it's been a really, really interesting talk this morning. Really appreciate the invite to come along. So, yeah, we're a science-first company, I would say, but doing data science. So we help to solve the data silo problems that what happens within an industry. So, so companies in the food sector, they have a lot to learn from each other's data. So there's a really nice project that has run in the UK, they call the Food Industry Intelligence Network, where they share quite confidential, regulatory sensitive data on a secure confidential platform. And now they all can learn and see signals that are occurring in the food system that they can't see with their own data alone. So it's a really exciting project, really innovative initiative. So we have to provide the platform for it, but we didn't come up with a concept. They really had to get buy-in from the regulators to facilitate them to share this quite sensitive data. So another project that the US FDA have championed. And really the challenge here is that, again, very siloed data, even within the FDA, which is an enormous organization, but also with other regulatory agencies within the US, but also other regulatory agencies from across the globe, because they import and export a huge amount of food. So here really it's been on standardizing on terminology and what exactly does a particular term mean, and does everyone understand that? And then bringing all of that data together on a common platform. So now we're starting to use AI and machine learning to get insight, and they're now building out predictive models as to what are the future issues, where are the concerns, what's the most likely scenarios, like even simple things like what's the maximum number of days that you need to provide growth reduction technologies and to enable safe food. So there's been a lot of ambiguity and a lot of different opinion on this. Now they have real data, data-driven decisions now on this. So yeah, so there's the technology usually isn't the barrier here. It can really provide a solution to help to minimize the challenges that are faced, with such complex regulatory scenarios across the globe, so many different terminologies, so many different units, all of those things. Technology can solve those problems and really help for that, fast, quick wins and data-driven decisions and science-driven decisions. So yeah, I'll be around afterwards, happy to talk about lots of other projects on where regulatory agencies have really actually managed to benefit from technology. So yeah,
thank you. Thank you, Brendan, for that. Looking at the time, and we are reaching actually the closing time of this session, I would like to turn back to Prof. Hussein, if there are any concluding remarks or any recommendations or any points that you would like to make before we close. And this is great that we finish with the excitement note, for sure.
Yeah, I think probably we can proceed, Prof. Sam. Maybe we need to prepare that concept paper and circulate it to all members, including also the private sector and other maybe colleagues like the USDA, to give us some feedbacks and to go on, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Hussein. Thank you all, actually. Thank you for the leadership of all of you, whether be it essentially the regulatory agencies, the industry group, the academia, all the partners, the technology providers. I think actually this really exemplifies collaboration, and hopefully we'll continue to work together on this path. Thank you very much for your support, and I'm going to wish you a great continuation of the conference. See you very soon at the next session. All the best.
you.